afternoon. How are you? And welcome to a special interview with Dr. Cornelis Los, who's chief economist at the NMB Bank Group in New York. He is a founding member of the European Community Chamber of Commerce in the United States. He spent 7 years with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and 3 years as chief economist with the Nomura Research Institute of America. And we are going to be talking about the momentous, the terrific changes in the Soviet Union, their impact on the world, the economies of the world, and particularly the United States. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you for having me here, Jack.
It is our pleasure. It is nice to see you. By the way, I understand the Netherlands have the greatest investment in the United States of any European country. How does that compare with Japan? I once saw some figures showing that the Dutch had more invested here than the Japanese. And I don't know if that's still true or not. Would you know?
It was true until about 2 years ago, but the Japanese in the meantime have overtaken us, but we are almost the same. The largest investor in the United States, by the way, is Great Britain.
Oh, the largest is Great Britain?
Yes, Great Britain.
Nice.
Direct investor, yeah.
Oh.
But
I knew we had the largest investments there, but I didn't realize they had the largest investments here as well.
That's right. In the past 3 years, by the way, if we may want to go to Eastern Europe, in the past 3 years, the United States has become one of the larger investors in Eastern Europe. Not in total amount of money, but certainly as one of the fastest growing. However, the total, the impact of the coup on those investments is minimal. And
okay, so let's talk about the failed coup. Did that surprise you? Let me ask you first, did the dissolution of the Soviet Union surprise you? Did its timing and suddenness surprise you?
I think there was already a lot in the making. Shevardnadze had warned already of a coup d'etat last year. There were already warnings a couple of weeks before the coup. But of course, the coup was mostly a political affair, and the disbandment of the Communist Party is also mostly an economic and political affair. What is more important, though, I think, for the world is what is the economic situation there. The Soviet Union and Eastern European countries are going into a deep depression. The Soviet Union is declining at the rate of about 20% this year. The other East European countries about 10-15%. Something has to be done. You know that the United States has been very reluctant, but I think they will provide food and medical care and humanitarian assistance this winter, together with the other European nations, to the East Bloc.
Why is the world so reluctant to make financial aid available to the Soviet Union? It would seem that it might well be in the best interests of the West to help them get through this turbulent time and not have a civil war break out or have some madmen take over, as some tried to do. Yeah. Why the... And of course, not everyone is reluctant. The Germans are of the opinion that we should do something, but the Great Britain and the U.S. don't think so. What do you think?
Well, there are several factors that play a role, and one of them is indeed Germany, Western Europe, has the greatest stake in Eastern Europe. For example, the Soviet Union has a foreign debt of about $62 billion to the West. About a third of that is to West Germany alone. The United States has is only for $500 million involved in that. So indeed, talking just finance, it seems to me that Western Europe has the greatest stake there. If you talk about the military balance, then of course an economic stability would be in the interest of the United States. So I think that in the longer run, the United States will provide assistance, but not in the form of what we have done, say, in the 70s and 60s and 70s with the LDC countries in Latin America, where we have been throwing money at the problem and not gotten anywhere. So now the United States, together with Japan, takes a somewhat different attitude. They will look at more technical assistance, trying to provide the know-how that is necessary in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is a very productive nation in a sense. They have large natural resources. The only question is how to make them productive and how to use the resources optimally. And I think that that is where the United States can provide a lot of know-how. They can exactly tell what to do about the logistics of distribution, for example. This winter, food distribution is of enormous importance. So the best we can do is not only send over grain, but also send over teams to help them with setting up this distribution system.
There are a number of U.S. oil companies working on joint ventures with the Soviet Union. And do you think that's wise? If you were a CEO at a major U.S. oil company, would you be trying to get your foot in the door over there?
Well, certainly. The Soviet Union is one of the largest oil producers in the world. They certainly would be useful for us if we could help them produce more oil and once and for all break the back of the OPEC cartel. I think that it is in the interest of the West to get a somewhat lower oil price as it is. Yes, so I think that it is definitely in the interest of the West to help in that way.
Okay. And just before we leave the matter of economic aid, do you think I assume from what you said, that the United States learned from the loans to the less or underdeveloped countries? Don't do that?
Yeah, I think that we have learned a lot from the LDC countries' situation. We were settled up with an enormous debt, Latin American debt, and now we know that we have to be more cautious, more careful with that. Also, we have learned that we can provide solutions to such debt situations. I don't think that a debt overhang like now already exists in Eastern Europe, and debt overhang, by the way, which now has gained proportions that are equal to the LDC debt, that such a problem has to continue to exist, because we can make solutions for such debt problems. Our bank is involved in providing such solutions. We have created, together with other banks, a secondary market in the debt. We have made these debt assets liquid and tradable. We do that for the moment also with domestic distressed debt in the United States. And I don't see any reason why we could not do that also in Europe. In fact, that is exactly what our office in Vienna and our office in Moscow are trying to do. They provide services that help with debt conversion and try to make the situation more palatable.
How will the dissolution of the Soviet Union affect the United States? Militarily, it would seem to be to our advantage to have that superpower disintegrate, but on the other hand, we may have a number of different states with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that is certainly a problem, but that I leave to the military experts. I think it is.
You don't worry about that.
I'm certainly worried about it, but let's look at what happened this week. We have seen already that the nucleus of a new Commonwealth, a new economic community has been created. In particular, the Ukraine and the Russian Federated State has concluded a treaty. There is an understanding between Kazakhstan and the Russian Federated Republic. So I think that now there is a possibility to recreate the Soviet Union. If you look at the trade flows between these various republics, they are enormous. These republics export about 50 to 60% of their products to other republics and import equal amounts. It is of the utmost importance that that trade network remains intact. In fact, the problem that we have had in the past couple of years already in Eastern Europe is that the trade network of the Comecon has broken down. Now, it is of great importance that the commodity exchanges and the labor exchanges that have been created in the past year, there are now 300 new commodity exchanges in the Soviet Union alone, that these exchanges remain functioning. They have to be provided with finance. They have to be provided with technical assistance. In fact, I think that here in Chicago, there are a lot of there's a lot of expertise that could be used in setting up and running commodity exchanges in the Soviet Union, and to help with setting up a wholesale distribution system, something that they lack.
It is said that the new Soviet Union, and it certainly won't resemble the old one, might resemble the European community, or perhaps NATO. Do those 15 republics cooperate with each other now and get along now to the extent that they would have free trade and cooperation and could have a similar organization to the European community?
At this very moment, no. It is very clear that there's a divergence of not only of opinion but also of interest. But you can see that there are certain forms of cooperation possible. For example, the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they have broken away now, but they are as an unit very important to the Soviet Union. They are the entry and exit ports of the Soviet Union. The natural resource that the Soviet Union so abundantly has have to be exported. Other consumer goods and capital goods have to be imported. Now, I don't see why the Baltic states could not have a similar position like the Netherlands have versus West Germany. The Netherlands has a major port, Rotterdam, which basically functions as an entry and exit port for the rest of Western Europe. The Baltic states could do the same thing for the Soviet Union and related Eastern European countries. You can be politically independent and still function together as an economic unity. But it will be there's a long way to go there. Some of the republics no longer want to be in that Commonwealth. Moldavia probably will belong to Romania. I don't think that that the Georgia and Azerbaijan will necessarily belong to the unity of the Ukraine and the Russian Federated Republic. Maybe they can form their own free trade area. So it will be a different constellation, but I foresee that there will be not a total disintegration because it is in the economic interest, financial interest of these republics to form some sort of unity.
Why is the Soviet Union standard of living so horribly low?
I think there are various reasons. The main reason is the markets don't function. One of the first things that the Soviet Union should do is decontrol the prices and bring demand and supply in agreement with each other. One of the things that also should be done is you have to mop up a lot of the liquidity that has been pumped into the economy by the central bank. We have been thinking about it, and there are various suggestions to do that, and simultaneously such suggestions can then also provide employment for the people there. One such suggestion goes as follows. Let the union draw up a highway plan and let it be delegated to the republics, who can then subcontract it to private contractors to build this highway plan. That would also be for the benefit of the United States, because we could provide the construction equipment, like Caterpillar could do that. Then you could, the next thing that you should have to do is that these republics or the Union itself should issue debt to finance this, and the debt should become tradable. You should sell it to the public via mutual bond funds. And what you do then is not only you suck up the extra liquidity that is in the economy, but you provide the citizens a possibility to have a stake in their own future, because you finance the future that is right there being built. The infrastructure is being built. And such a plan would accomplish a lot of things. And in fact, such a plan has been executed in the United States after the Second World War, when the conversion from a more military situation to a civilian situation occurred. The United States had a highway plan that was very beneficial to all the states, and that provides still benefits up till this day.
Food, I read that they supply enough food, just barely enough, to feed their people, but only about 80% of it gets to market.
Well, that is indeed a major problem. At the moment, because of the price situation, the price is not decontrolled, the farmers are holding back food. In fact, the Soviet Union is one of the major producers, of course, of wheat and barley. And the system in itself is not as inefficient as it looks, but the distribution system is virtually non-existent. In fact, the Red Army could provide the rolling material this winter, and together with the logistical assistance of Western countries like the United States, you could bring the food to the cities. But it has been said by Wolski that still the Soviet Union has to import about 60-70 million tons of grain in order to feed the people this winter, so it is a very dire situation.
Well, what's the situation now between the U.S. and the Soviet Union regarding foodstuffs? Do we have totally free shipments of wheat and corn and beef and so on, or what's the situation there?
In principle, it can be done. The United States
is it being done?
Well, that is the real problem. The United States has guaranteed $1.5 billion worth of grain transports to the Soviet Union. The 600 million has succeeded, but now the problem is the next 400 million this month, and then the 500 million for next month. The problem is that the banks are reluctant to finance it, the American banks, that is. I think that there are sufficient European banks, maybe our bank too, that are willing to assist in this respect to finance the grain transports.
Is your bank in better shape than most U.S. banks? We know why U.S. banks aren't making loans. Most of them have bad, I shouldn't say most, but many of them have bad portfolios. Piece of paper the other day, 100 banks with assets of 100 million or more in the U.S. expected to fail in the next 3 years. Yeah. Yours is in good shape?
Yeah, in fact, our bank is in an excellent shape. We went through a couple of mergers in the last couple of years, and we seem to be now the 11th largest financial institution in Europe, very well capitalized. So I think that there would be possibilities to provide commodity financing.
Do they know that at the White House, or should we give them a call and say, look, you want to help the Soviet Union? We have the people with the money. He just offered.
Well, I'm not sure that I right here offered, but
this is not an official.
It is also a question not only of providing the financing, because I think it is also a question of providing the know-how how to do things. One of the businesses that we are involved in, for example, is trying to reduce the investment risk in difficult emerging markets, as we call them.
Okay, good. We have a market report right here.
Okay.
And as soon as that's through, we'll come back and continue this conversation.
Thank you, Jack.
Dr. Cornelis Los, he is chief economist for the NMB Postbank Group of the Netherlands. And right now, a market report from Steve Shiven. We'll be back.
Jack, ever since the first hour of trading, we've been to the downside, and things are no different, though we have regained some of the losses earlier in the session. Currently, the Dow Jones Industrial Averages are down 9.61 at 3040.03, transports off 1.23, and utilities down 0.76. The trend is at 1.17. That is above 1, and in theory indicates buying, or I should say selling pressure. The tick, a positive 184. The ticky, a positive 2. Advancing issues 628, 822 are declining, 581 are unchanged. Up volume 35,672,000, down volume 54,400,000, total volume 103,810,000 shares. So we're seeing a slowing in the volume as we head toward the long 3-day weekend. The NYSE down 0.84, Amex down 0.03, NASDAQ down 1.94. S&P 100 down 1.56, September S&P is down 1.50, and the S&P 500 is down 1.79, yielding a premium of 0.82. September T-bonds are down 22/32, September T-bills down 0.08, September dollar index is flat at 93.65. October COMEX gold down $2.80 an ounce. October crude oil up a quarter a barrel at $22.22. And the CRB index is up 1.54. It's 1:48 on the Stock Market Observer, and stay with us. We'll return to the interview with Jack Taylor and Dr. Cornelis Los, chief economist for the NMB Postbank Group.
Who?
Burke, Christensen, and Lewis.
Thanks. I already have a discount broker. They're all the same.
Hey, wait a minute. You're too bright to believe that. Besides, Burke, Christensen, and Lewis's minimum commission is only $34.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I know where you trade. And I know you're paying more than $34.
A lot more.
Like I said, all discount brokers aren't the same.
Like I said, thanks.
For?
For a better place to save money. Burke, Christensen, and Lewis.
And it's part two of our conversation with Dr. Cornelis Los, Chief Economist for the NMB Bank. It is a Netherlands bank with a strong presence in the United States. We've been talking about the failed coup in the Soviet Union and the disintegration of the Soviet Union and what it means to the world. Do you think that Gorbachev is through, or will they have some kind of will he preside over the Soviet Union and it's really kind of a powerless organization? What do you think?
Well, that's a very hard judgment to make, but I hope actually that Gorbachev will stay on for a while in order to guarantee that some form of economic unity will prevail. However, he has already said that as soon as the new union treaty will be signed, he will write out presidential elections. He will be put up for an election, and I'm afraid that he will lose the election. Of course, it will be terrific to see him on a team with, say, Shevardnadze, and see what the elections will be.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about some suggestions for the post-coup Soviet economy and what they can do to get back on their feet. What about the ruble? As I understand it, things are very inflationary in the Soviet Union because there's so many of them in circulation and so many Soviet citizens have them. But nobody seems to want it outside of the Soviet Union. How do you handle that? How do you get convertibility of the ruble?
Well, for that you would have to follow indeed a very diverse policy. I disagree with the Harvard proposal to have a very balanced budget and simultaneously in tight monetary policy, because at the moment that is not what the Soviet Union needs. I think you should have indeed a fairly loose fiscal policy, deficit, debt financing, because after all, you have to build up a country, you have to look forward, and you have to make...
Soviet central government now have a lot of debt?
Yeah, in fact it does. In fact it is huge in comparison with the United States. The Soviet Union has about 300 billion rubles debt, about 100 billion central government and 200 billion of the republic governments. But what is more telling, it is about 30% of their GNP. Now compare that with our GNP deficit of the unified government is about 2.5%. But
so they have 30% debt to our 2.5%.
That's right. But
now what they spent on defense was a bigger percentage of their GNP than what we spent, right?
That's correct. In fact, they spent about 15% on their GNP, and we spent about 6%. However, their GNP is less than half of ours, so in total spending it's about equal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So back
to the ruble. What you would have to follow is a tight monetary policy, though, because you have to mop up somehow these rubles. Unfortunately, they don't have what we have in treasury market, by which you, via open market operations, could achieve that. In the United States, we have a system where the Federal Reserve System can buy and sell treasury notes. If they sell the treasury notes, they take the liquidity out. Such a system has to be built also in the Soviet Union. You can no longer finance the deficits of that magnitude with just printing the money. In fact, 2 years ago, Greenspan, Chairman Greenspan of the Federal Reserve System went to the Soviet Union to exactly make that proposal, to create a sort of treasury market for the Soviet Union.
And what happened?
Well, they are working on it, and I know that the Federal Reserve System is providing technical assistance in this respect, and also the other international organizations, IMF and World Bank, are helping in that respect too, but it takes time to set up such a system.
And it is kind of hard to establish markets when you're being held captive on vacation.
Say that.
Yes. And so the convertibility of the ruble is one of their big problems. What else are they facing?
Well, as almost any other problem that you have. You have to have an institutional reform. They're working on that. That's clear. The new union treaty is part of that. You have to have a reform in the goods markets. The commodity markets exchanges have to be set up and run. In fact, let me tell you a little anecdote here. I said last week during the coup, I saw in the Parliament's building Barbara Walters were trying to interview Yeltsin, and I see there one of our friends who had set up a commodity exchange in his three-piece suit, but with a gun on his hips, and smiling because he was literally defending his rights there. I think that there is a large stake there of the democratic forces of the businessmen to preserve what they have at the moment and to expand it. Another thing that has to be done is make the labor markets more efficient. Show people that it is not bad to become unemployed if you also then are surging to a new job. And they have to do the search now themselves. They can no longer rely on the state to do that for them and to fit them like plugs in a clockwork. So there is now a labor exchange in Moscow, and that should be run more smoothly.
It's a lot more complicated to privatize than it is to go the other way, isn't it? It's pretty simple for a dictatorial government to seize railroads and farms and factories and so on and suddenly nationalize them. But to privatize is much more complicated.
That is indeed a very difficult affair, but there are various techniques to do it. In fact,
do we have, excuse me, do we have any good models? And I don't think of any right offhand where a country has thrown off communism and made a nice smooth transition to democracy and capitalism and prospered. Do we have any good models?
Yeah, in fact we do. Our neighbors, the South, have done this. Mexico of Salinas definitely is a wonderful example where a one-party state has been able to make the transition towards a more capitalist system. Is in fact a very illustrative example too, because we have been throwing money at Mexico in the 60s and 70s and nothing happened. It was only in the 80s when the spirit of free markets started to prevail, and when actually the institutional reforms came through to that extent, that such markets were created. And you see the effect. I mean, Mexico is booming at the moment. So I think that if similar measures are applied in the Soviet Union, that you would get a similar situation too.
Would investors, well, let's put a two-part question. Yeah. Would American business people be wise to get into the Soviet Union as soon as possible, joint venture or whatever? And would investors in this country be wise to invest in Eastern European enterprises as well as Soviet enterprises? Or would you be cautious and wait for the dust to settle, wait and see?
Well, I'm a Dutchman, and Dutch traders have never been very cautious. They have always been involved in risky enterprises, but in a way that you reduce the risk. And I think that there are no sufficient techniques, swaps, conversions, futures, options, that you can make a transition towards a more risk-free environment while you still can reap the high returns that are available there. However, having said that, I must admit that at the moment it is only for the very large corporations with very deep pockets the best to invest there, not small companies. But we do have the ability to help medium-sized companies at the moment with joint ventures, with cooperative business situations, yeah.
So on balance, at this point, you think the disintegration of the Soviet Union will be good for the Soviet people as well as for Europe and the West, good for the world?
Yes, in a sense it has created a situation of fluidity and flexibility, and now we can create a system that is much more productive than before. And I think that in the United States and in Europe there is a lot of talent available, economic, financial talent available to provide such assistance. I wish the Soviet people very much luck in their enterprise, but what is clear is most of that they have to do that themselves. And it is the same situation in Eastern Europe. The countries that are best positioned at the moment in Eastern Europe are the ones in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, which are the foremost in the reforms. The ones that are most backward still, well, Albania have still not had any type of reform. Bulgaria is still lagging, and Romania too. But there are some countries where definite possibilities exist. The NMB office in Vienna is certainly positioned also to provide good assistance with operations in that area.
Doctor, thank you so very much for being here. Dr. Cornelis Los, Chief Economist for the NMB Postbank of the Netherlands. We wish you continued good luck and good health.
Thank you very much, Jack.
I'm Jack Taylor. I'm the Stock Market Observer from TV 26.